How does a $200,000 DIY drone strapped with an old Soviet-era bomb manage to destroy a $500 million submarine, also called the Black Hole or the Russian Kilo-class submarine, while Russia fortified the surface with nets and pontoons? This Ukrainian sea sub baby exploited a critical flaw that defensive nets only extended a few meters deep. The drone simply slipped underneath them. It navigated a complex, heavily guarded harbor maze to deliver a perfect strike. The blast shattered the stern, destroyed the propulsion, and fatally compromised the pressure hull. How did they pull this off, and is the era of the submarine over? More detail, all in the video ahead. Here is a question that naval commanders have been afraid to ask for over a century. Can this relatively cheap, unmanned underwater drone hunt down and destroy a $500 million stealth submarine, while it's sitting inside its own heavily guarded home port? For decades, the answer was no. Submarines are the apex predators of the sea. They are designed to be invisible, silent, and untouchable. But on December 15, 2025, that answer changed forever. A new Ukrainian weapon, the Subsea Baby, didn't just scratch the pain of Russia's prized Varv Yanka submarine. It proved that the era of the invincible submarine might be over. So, how did they pull off the impossible? To understand the magnitude of this strike, we first need to look at where it happened. This wasn't in the open ocean or near the contested waters of Crimea. The target was docked here in Novorossiysk. After repeated missile strikes made Sevastopol and Crimea a death trap for the Russian Navy, Moscow retreated its most valuable assets to Novorossiysk, hundreds of kilometers to the east. This port was supposed to be the ultimate safe haven. It is fortified with layers of physical nets, floating booms, and constant patrols designed specifically to stop surface drones. The Russians believed their fleet was finally safe behind these walls, but they were looking at the surface of the water when they should have been looking below it. This brings us to the how. Enter the Subsea Baby. Unlike the famous Sea Baby surface drones we've seen skimming the waves, this new variant is an unmanned underwater vehicle, or UUV. While surface drones can be spotted by thermal cameras or stopped by floating barriers, the Subsea Baby operates completely submerged. It essentially functions like a long-range, slow-moving torpedo that can be piloted remotely. But what's inside the nose? Well, it sits a massive 450-kilogram shaped charge warhead that is nearly double the explosive power of a standard anti-ship missile. Unlike aerial weapons that hit the superstructure, this drone travels deep to strike the keel, the spine of the ship. When it detonates against the pressure hull of the submarine, it creates a bubble jet effect that doesn't just punch a hole. It snaps the vessel's back, ensuring it never surfaces again. According to intelligence reports, the drone utilized the noisy acoustic environment of the busy commercial port to mask its own motor sounds. It slipped underneath the defensive nets that only extend a few meters deep. It then navigated the complex harbor, likely using guidance from pre-mapped sea terrain, and homed in on the acoustic signature of the submarine's generator. It struck the Varv Yanka at its most vulnerable point, the stern, bypassing the hull's thickest armor. So what is the cost of this mistake? The damage is catastrophic. The Varv Yanka class is nicknamed the Black Hole by NATO because it is incredibly quiet, but that stealth relies on a perfect, uncompromised hull. The explosion reportedly shattered the stern compartment, destroying the propulsion shaft and compromising the pressure hull. This effectively takes the submarine off the board permanently. We are talking about a loss of roughly $500 million that is almost $500 million, caused by a drone that costs a fraction of that price. But the real damage isn't financial, it's strategic. This submarine was a primary launch platform for Kalibr cruise missiles. Those launchers are now silent. More importantly, Ukraine has proven that even in the safest harbor, behind the thickest walls, there is no place left to hide. What the Russian submarines could have done was use some kind of artificial intelligence to detect enemy unmanned vessels. They could have utilized AI sonar scanners like the American upgraded Ohio-class nuclear subs. That might be an enemy submarine, giving the captain more time to pick the right target using AI. But this was not the first time the Sea Sub Baby was used. One fine night on the 3rd of June 2025, the Special Forces carried an underwater bombing of the Kerch Bridge. The operation used a combination of underwater drones, models like the Marichka, carrying large amounts of explosives to support Ukrainian combat divers in placing the charges. To prepare for the mission, Ukrainian forces used satellite imagery and underwater sonar mapping. It's also likely that small drones or covert dive teams were sent in earlier to gather detailed data on the bridge's underwater structure. This is how the bombs could have been planted. Under the cover of night, the divers made their approach using closed-circuit rebreathers, which allowed them to move silently, with minimal acoustic or visual detection. They navigated with precision using sonar pingers and underwater GPS or inertial navigation systems, guiding them directly to the structural base of the bridge. Once the necessary intelligence had been gathered, the team likely deployed Marichka-class underwater drones to help transport the explosives, an enormous payload of nearly 1,000 kilograms or roughly 1 ton. The explosives were likely a mix of shaped charges or limpet mine-style devices engineered for maximum impact against submerged structural supports. To give you an idea, the Ford Fiesta weighs about 1 ton, which is 1,000 kilograms. Now imagine the scale of this operation. Ukrainian forces had to transport nearly a ton of explosives, roughly the size and weight of that car. Think about how many trips they had to make back and forth from Ukrainian territory, just to deliver and carefully place that much explosive material beneath the bridge. When the divers reached their designated targets, they began attaching the explosive devices directly to the bridge's support piers. These charges were probably magnetized or outfitted with specialized clamps to remain secure even in strong underwater currents. To ensure they remain undetected, the devices were carefully placed below the silt line or within recessed structural joints, areas difficult to inspect with standard drones or surveillance equipment. To prevent tampering and guarantee mission success, the charges were equipped with anti-handling mechanisms and could be triggered remotely or via timed detonation. After the installation was complete, the divers quietly withdrew along their original route. It's also possible they had alternate extraction plans, such as surfacing at a remote location or being retrieved by a submersible. Then, at precisely 4:44 a.m. local time on June 3, 2025, the explosives were detonated. The resulting blast caused significant structural damage to one of the bridge's spans, disrupting traffic and cutting off a key logistical route, a major blow to Russian military operations in occupied Crimea. In the future, Ukraine also plans to use the Marichka underwater drone to target bridges. Functioning like a torpedo, it can strike and potentially damage or destroy these structures. As stated, there is a possibility they used Marichka,